Welcome to the Smithville, Texas Eco Photo Festival webinar series. I'm Jill Strobe, the chair of the Smithville Area Chamber of Commerce and one of the founders of EcoFest. Both the Texas Photo Festival and the EcoFest, which was originally the Green Expo, have been a tradition in Smithville for over a decade. We are experimenting with this year with the connection between eco and photo, and we're also obviously experimenting with the virtual format. We thank you, the viewer, and your interest in these topics. If you are interested in another perspective on wildlife along the river, please check out the presentation by Kevin Anderson with UT's Center for Environmental Research, and check out the other presentations on a wide variety of topics connecting eco with photo. Today's presenter is Kevin Hutchison, who will discuss taking photographs along the river. Kevin began his career in professional photographer in 1982 after he graduated from the Milwaukee Area Technical College with an associate's degree in commercial photography. He worked in photography in the next 10 years in various positions, including head photographer at Indiana University, photography instructor at the United States Army Warrant Officers School and Defense Information School, and finally as a photographer at Third Eye Photography in Austin for about 4 years. After that, he found Smithville and he took a break from photography to start Hill Country Fly Fishers, a fly fishing guide business. Once he built Hill Country Fly Fishers into a successful business, Kevin returned to photography, forming Plain Brown Wrapper Images, a boudoir photography business. Today, Kevin runs both businesses and from time to time melds them together to produce unique images using the skills he learned over the years in nature and in the studio. He also works with his wife, Terry Coteau, at We Logo Anything. So this is a very entrepreneurial couple located right here in the Smithville area. We are very proud to be connected to both of them. Kevin, thank you so much for being here today and for all the work you do in Smithville area and along the Colorado River. So here you go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jill. It's always funny to hear my own bio read back to me. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk, kind of split this presentation into two separate units. One of them being the practical unit on how to actually get ready to go out and take pictures on the river, because it can be a little tricky when you carry a lot of expensive equipment. It's a little bit tricky to go out on the water. Disasters can ensue. So I'm going to just do a little practical run over of what I actually take on the river, how I pack things, and what I bring along to avoid disasters. And then we're going to actually go in and look at some images and talk about those. So the first thing I want to talk about, let me reach down here, is kind of a basic statement. This is not waterproof. This is what you put $3 of lunch meat in. This is not what you put a $2,000 or $3,000 camera in, or a cell phone or anything else. I can't tell you how many of these I have found on the river with cell phones inside, completely soaked with water. This is a Ziploc bag. It is not a waterproof container. So that's not going to work. So basically what you're going to need to do is get yourself some waterproof containers. And this one is a smaller one that I have, but it's very representational. This is a ED lens, costs about $1,500. So somehow buying a $100 waterproof case for it really doesn't seem like a big investment when it's protecting a $1,500 lens. These are sold by many brands. Pelican is probably the most common. They come in a lot of different sizes. I have so many of them that I have to mark what's on each one of them, but they're very readily available. Actually, Harbor Freight has been carrying them now. And but look for one with a good gasket in it that looks like it's well made. It's pretty easy to spot the cheap ones from the good ones. But those are mandatory. If you're going to go out and photograph anything, even if you're going to take a cell phone, they make very small ones for your cell phones. And this is a cell phone that I use, and we're going to cover a lot of, there'll be a lot of images that I've taken with this cell phone. And I'll explain the advantages to actually using a cell phone as we go along. But just know that Ziploc bags aren't going to cut it. So whenever you have that urge to use a Ziploc bag, really just move along and get the proper equipment. A few other things that I take with me. I got to reach down the floor, guys. Sorry. One of the basic items that I always have is a 2.5 gallon Ziploc bag with desiccant powder in it. And if tragedy ensues, something falls in the water, the first thing you want to do with any electronic gear is if it falls in the water is to take the battery out of it immediately if you can get to it. That will stop the unit from short circuiting, whether it's a camera or a cell phone or a strobe unit. Get the battery out of it. This desiccant powder is easy to find. You can go to any dollar store, and this is a closet dehumidifier. You just break it open, take the little beads out of it, put them in a big Ziploc bag. I get these 2.5 gallon ones, and they hold about 3 or 4 of those, and they will literally save you. I have dunked expensive cameras in the water, grabbed them quickly, got the batteries out of them, and thrown them inside there, and they've been absolutely fine. That lens that I showed you earlier has been in the water, unfortunately, and it is still perfect because I was able to get it in that powder immediately and save it. So never go anywhere without that. Another thing that's critical that people often overlook is very simple: a towel. You are going to get in the water if you are going to follow some of my instructions here about changing angles and taking photos from different angles, and a towel is critical. I never leave without 3 of these. Because you are going to need to dry your hands off, because obviously you don't want to touch your camera with wet hands, and you're just going to need to dry off because you get in the water and you get out of the water a lot. A few other things I take with me. A lot of times I use auxiliary strobe units. So I have a real basic light stand that I take with me. This has a screw top on it, and all of my strobe units have screw threads on the bottom, so I can screw my strobe units into these. It's very helpful when you don't have an extra person to help you as an assistant. I also always take my tripod with me. This is a Bogan tripod. It's a little bit heavy. It works on a plate system, so I can snap the cameras in and out of it, and I'll talk a little bit about why that's important. But again, it's an expensive tripod. This tripod will cost you about $500, but it will last you forever. This one replaced one just recently that I replaced that I actually had since college. So it lasted from 1982 until the year 2000, and I replaced it. So spend a little bit of money on that. Let me talk a little bit about what kind of cameras I take with me. When I'm actually shooting for real and I'm not just doing grab shots, I'll take a DSLR with me. This one happens to be a D300S Nikon. I've got these all packed, lens caps on them, body caps on them, as packed up as I can get. They're in a waterproof case. I never leave without an identical backup. This is another 300S. Just in case accidents happen, I want to be able to move from one camera to another. I talked a little bit about the Bogan tripod system. This is a base plate that attaches to the bottom of the camera. In my camera box right now, I have 3 of them. I have 2, one for each of the 2 camera bodies, and then I have one that has a cell phone attachment, so that when I attach this to the tripod, I can squeeze this open, pull it open, put my cell phone in it. So I have 3 of those plates. The plate system is very easy because when I go to change cameras, I'm not fumbling around with thumb screws. I can literally snap one on, snap the next one off. Very, very simple to do. I carry lenses anywhere from that ED lens I showed you, which goes out to 300 millimeters. I have lenses in my case that go from 8 millimeter to 300 millimeter. I'm not a huge fan of zoom lenses, so I use a lot of what are called prime lenses, which means that they have one focal distance. This is my all-time favorite lens. This is a 105 macro lens. It is absolutely flawless. I do a lot of people photography in my photography business. And this lens, if I lost this lens, my life would be over. It's really hard to replace. It's a super sharp lens. It's a great focal distance. It's an excellent, excellent portrait lens. If you have not experimented with this focal distance, it is phenomenal. So I carry, in my case right now, I have 5 lenses, not including the ED lens. So I take about 6 lenses with me. I also take a strobe unit. Like I said, an individual, this is just a flash unit with a tilt head and a diffuser that comes off. There we go. And this can be used as a slave. I have a slave trigger that is in my case. I can put that on my camera. I can fire this remotely so that I am not tied to the camera. I very rarely use on-camera flash for anything. I'll almost always have the flash at a different angle to get the lighting that I want to fill in. Most of the time it's fill in flash when I'm doing stuff on the river. But this is very important. It's important to have a flash that you can vary the power on it. I can take this down about 8 or 9 different steps from bright to dim. So very useful item. It runs on AA batteries, which is very nice. One of the other things you learn very quickly is to always have extra batteries. These are waterproof battery cases. I have 3 sets of batteries for that strobe. I'm not going to run out of power. There's nothing worse than going through all the effort to get out to the river and to set up a shot and wait until the light's perfect, and then you don't have any battery power. So there's no dollar store on the river, so you got to kind of plan ahead. Another thing that I carry a lot of are memory cards. The D300s use 2 different style of memory cards. They use I forget what format this is. It's the smaller memory card. I think it's an SD card. And then they also use the compact flash cards. They shoot a dual card system. That way, if one card gets corrupted, there's another card as a backup, which is really nice because I've very often had cards corrupted. And again, it's really hard to justify going through all the effort that I go through to make these images and then cheaping out by not having a memory card backup. So all of my cameras shoot dual memory cards. The first thing I do when I get home is immediately download one of the memory cards onto a separate hard drive, not on my computer, that cannot be infected by anything. I have one computer at home that never sees the internet. It is strictly a photographic computer. That's all it does is store images and edit images. It has no internet access. It has been disabled. I can't even accidentally get on the internet. So there's no chance of viruses or anything else or anyone hacking into my system and stealing my photographs. So I will immediately download those onto a separate hard drive. Eventually they'll go onto the non-internet computer also as a backup. So I have a backup on a memory card, I have a backup on a computer hard drive, and I have a backup on an external hard drive. If I'm really paranoid about it, I also have Dropbox, which is a cloud service, and I'll put those on there. That's usually how I share images with my clients, is by building them a separate Dropbox, which is secure that they can get into. So that covers about what I take on the river with me. The biggest thing is protection. You always have to think of the worst case scenario. You always have to think of that camera falling off the tripod, falling in the water, and being gone. And so you've got to be very, very careful with what you do. When I'm on an extensive shoot, if I'm doing a large shoot, if I'm doing a boudoir shoot or something on the river, very often I will change memory cards after about 100 images. My average shoot on a river, if it's a 1-person shoot, is about 2,000 to 3,000 images. So I will go through 8 or 9 memory cards sometimes on a shoot, just to make sure that if something happens, if the camera is lost, if the memory cards are gone, we're only going to lose 100 or 200 images and not the whole shebang. It would be very stupid to put 2,000 or 3,000 images on one memory card and then have that camera be lost. So you always have to think about the worst case scenario, because no matter how well you plan, it could still happen. And that's a frightening thought for most of you that only have one camera. I have about 6 or 7, but it's still a frightening thought when I think about having to replace them. So be very careful, have a backup plan, take the desiccant powder with you. Again, they sell them at Dollar Tree, and I'm not hawking Dollar Tree, but they're great, and they're $1. And you can get 4 or 5 of these, $4 or $5, buy a big Ziploc bag. If something happens, you can get it in there immediately. It is far more effective than rice or putting it in the oven or putting it on your dashboard or any of that nonsense. This stuff is made to absorb water, and it does a damn good job doing it. So I can tell you from personal experience, when I dropped that ED lens in the water, my heart stopped. and the model that was with me, her heart stopped too, because she could see it on my face. But I got it out of the water within seconds, stuck it in that bag, and within 2 days, it was perfect, worked perfect again. So be prepared. I was a Boy Scout, and I guess I still have that be prepared attitude. So just be a little more prepared than most people. Other than that, you know, you can use a lot of different things. I know some of you may have GoPros, and GoPros are great because GoPros come in a waterproof case, and they're great little cameras to use. The limitations to GoPros are very simple. I do have GoPros and I do use them, but the limitations to GoPros are simple in that you cannot change the focal distance of that lens. If you want to get a close-up of something or a macro shot of something, you can't do it with a GoPro. They shoot a very wide angle. And the reason they do that is because they have no apparatus to focus. So everything's in focus kind of, and everything's out of focus kind of with a GoPro, but they're waterproof. And that's a big thing. So don't leave your GoPros at home. And I'm not downplaying GoPros. I have a few of them and I use them for certain things. The other thing is your camera. Again, my camera is in a waterproof case already, and I carry it in a waterproof case. So maybe that's a little belt and suspenders for you, but it works pretty well. This camera will do things that no DSLR will do, or no reasonably priced DSLR will do. One of the real great features of that camera is the panoramic feature. And when we get into looking at some images, I'll point out exactly which images were done with a cell phone on the panoramic mode, and which ones were done with a cell phone in general. So hopefully that helps you, excuse me, got the hiccups. Hopefully that helps you a little bit in planning your outing. All I can say is spend the money up front. If you're going to do this a lot, and if you're going to spend some time on the water, I just talked to a friend of mine that works at Austin Canoe and Kayak, and he said because of the pandemic, canoe sales are through the roof, kayak sales are through the roof. So I know a lot of you are looking for outdoor activities that you can do with your family where you're not cooped up and you can get out in nature and get out on the river or on lakes. And you're going to want to take your cameras with you. So invest a little bit of money, spend the money on a waterproof case. I will say that if you're in a kayak, the only addition that I would have to any of those waterproof cases is put a leash on them. Put a string on them, some kind of rope with a clip so that you can attach it to the kayak. I've photographed most of my photographs out of a raft or in the water, and I don't really have a risk of them falling overboard and drifting away, but a kayak's a whole different story. They're very slippery and things can fall off of them. So I would leash that to the kayak. I'd make sure that it's attached. But other than that, these waterproof cases are amazing. The big case that I have most of my camera gear in, I've probably dropped 100 times off my boat. I've kicked it off. I've accidentally bumped it off when I was getting in and out of the boat. And every single time it has been perfect. I have never lost a piece of gear when it was in the case and the case was closed. Case doesn't work very well when you don't close it. So make sure that when you get out and you take gear out of it, that you take that extra 2 or 3 seconds, close the lid, snap all the snaps on the lid. It doesn't work if all the buckles aren't buckled, people. So take your time and kind of make it work. So I think what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and try to look through some images, and I'm going to have somebody running my images for me. So April, if you could pull up the file that says Scenics, that would be handy. There we go. And just click on that first one for me. Thank you. And let's see if that comes up. I'm learning more about Zoom than I've ever learned before, by the way. So bear with us. I'm not seeing the image, April. Are you seeing it? Let's see here. There we go. Well, maybe. I'm back to being big again. There we go. Nope, that was a bird.
Okay, I'm sorry. Give me just a moment.
Okay, that's all right.
Do you see
There we go.
Do you see it?
Perfect.
Okay.
I see it. Beautiful. Okay, now this is a great example of a panorama that was done on the Smith River in Wyoming. And this was done with a cell phone. And I was not quite perfect on it. I haven't really cropped this image much, but you can see in the lower left and the upper right, that there's a little black area that I'll crop out eventually. But this is a very good example of a panorama. There is no way that you could shoot this with a standard DSLR. Even if you had a fisheye lens, which I do have, the distortion would just be amazingly, you know, horrible. So this is a great opportunity to use a cell phone. The other thing about this trip was it was a 5-day trip, and we were away from civilization for 5 days. We started at one point and we had to go to the end point. There was no getting out early or getting anything. We were on our own. So the DSLR was a little bit nerve-wracking taking that with me. So I just took a bunch of extra battery packs from my phone and went ahead and just used my cell phone, and I was very happy with the images I got. Can we go to the next one? There we go. One of the things that I don't shoot a lot of, to be honest with you, is just plain scenics. I always have this urge to want to put somebody in my scenic photographs. So very few of these scenics that you see will be just scenics alone with no people in them. These are the Sandstone Bluffs on the Llano River here in Texas. This is on a ranch that's owned by a gentleman named Homer Martin. These are probably the most photographed bluffs in the entire hill country. If you notice all those little holes, they're all swallow holes. And at night, thousands and thousands of little swallows come out of those holes, and it's truly amazing. This was taken in the spring. The springtime, the river is pretty clear. You can tell the water's pretty clear. But this is just a nice basic scenic picture that I took. And one of the things that you have to really think about when you're doing photographs, the whole reason we do photographs is very simple. It's to tell a story. We want to tell a story. I was there. I saw this. This was beautiful. I was moved by this. Whatever the story is, we want to tell that story. And so this, to me, tells that story. The kayaker in the foreground is nothing compared to those bluffs. Those bluffs have been there for eternity, and they'll be there long after we're gone. And that kayaker is pretty immaterial in the whole equation. And that's what I wanted to tell in this story, was that the beauty of these things, the majesty of these, we just don't even measure up. So, you know, that's what I want to tell. Let's go to the next one. This is the Blanco River. And again, this is just a strict story. I mean, I was there at that moment. I saw the clouds. I saw the river, you know, beautiful like that, reflecting everything. And is it a National Geographic image? No. Would I have rather have taken this image in the spring when there were leaves on the trees? Yeah, it would have been great. But I wasn't there in the spring. I was there then. And I was moved by the beauty of that river and the quietness of that river. I was 30 minutes outside of a big city, you know, San Marcos being a big city, 30 miles, 30 minutes away, and I might as well have been 100 years away. At that point, I felt like I was the only human in the world. And that's the story I wanted to get across. That's what I wanted to tell with that. Let's go to the next one. This is the San Marcos River. This is a river that I fish on a lot and I do a lot of photographs on. It's a beautiful river. It's one of the few rivers in Texas. It's called a point source river. And that means that about 95% of it comes from one hole in the ground, which is Aquarina Springs. Some of you that are a little bit older may remember the mermaids and Ralph the Swimming Pig from Aquarina Springs. But it's a beautiful river. It's gorgeous. It's right close to Smithville. It's an hour away from Smithville or Austin or wherever you're watching me from. It's accessible. And it's a very clean river, thanks to a lot of people that keep it clean, a lot of groups. But this is a great river if you want to learn to do photographs on. This is a great river to start, only because there is so much going on. There's trees in the river. There's all kinds of structure. As we get to more photographs, you'll see a lot of really cool structure that you can photograph. So this river is very expressive. It tells a lot of different stories. Let's go to the next. And again, this is the San Marcos in a different area. And again, I like to put people into the photographs to give it a little bit of scale and a little bit of context. This is a photograph that I took on a trip that I was running. And I knew these guys were coming behind me. And so I just simply got out of the boat, set up the photograph, and waited. A lot of doing the photographs that you're going to see requires waiting. It requires planning ahead, knowing how the light's going to look, knowing where the people are going to be, and simply waiting for them. Later on, I'm going to show you what I call a trap focus photograph, where I took about 12 photographs to get one good image, but it was a really well-planned image and it turned out the way I wanted it to. But I love this image, very nice. Let's go to the next. And don't limit yourself to far away rivers. This is basically Lady Bird Lake. Before some of the big skyscrapers went in. But this is a friend of mine fishing out of a kick boat. And you know, urban fisheries are neat, but urban rivers are just as cool. They're beautiful. Austin is lucky because, you know, most of the people in Austin actually get it, and they care about nature, and they care about keeping these rivers clean that run right through the middle of, this river runs right through the middle of a huge urban center, and it's relatively clean. And an incredible river to go to. You can rent boats on it. You can paddle around on it. It's very accessible. So I would say, you know, if you live in Austin and you feel like you can't get away to the San Marcos and you still want to do, you know, use the river as a prop or use the river and just go out and photograph it, you're right there. I've done a lot of night photography with the buildings reflected on Town Lake or Lady Bird Lake, I guess. And it's beautiful. All right, let's go to the next. This is the Guadalupe, and this isn't a particularly stunning image. The reason I like it so much is that water looks frozen. It looks literally like it's ice. And growing up in Wisconsin, I know what ice looks like. And it was an amazing day out there. It was one of the few days where that river was just almost smooth as glass or smooth as ice. And I wanted to kind of get that image across. One of the beautiful things about the rivers here in the hill country that's really nice are the cypress trees. They're amazing, and they're hundreds of years old. There are ones on the San Marcos that they've done core samples of that are 200-300 years old. And the cypress trees are beautiful. They're beautiful to photograph because of their intricate root systems. And they're just a very good player in most of the images that you're going to take. So I would definitely encourage you to hit rivers like the Guadalupe, the Blanco, the San Marcos. They have beautiful, beautiful cypress trees. Let's go to the next. Or are we done in that file? Oh, there we go. This is back to the Smith River. And again, I wanted to really show the majesty of this river. This river is the only river in Montana that you actually need a permit to be on. And they're very stingy about the permits. You have to file a $150 permit filing fee. And it took us 10 years to get a permit to float this river. So you can do the math on how much money we spent up front just to float this river for 5 days. It was an amazing river to float, just an amazing river in general. And those bluffs, they say it all. I mean, they were just breathtaking. There's nothing that man can make that can measure up to this. And again, I wanted to put a little bit of contextual elements into it. So taking it with the boats in the foreground, just to kind of give you a scale, to let you really understand how big these things were and how tall they were. So don't be afraid to do that. I waited hours until the light was just going down and hitting that rock face perfectly. And I just waited and waited and waited and did other things around camp. But the minute that light got where I wanted it, that was when I started taking my photographs. Okay, and that was a cell phone photograph. Let's go to the next one. Changing your angle is critical sometimes, and every single photography book you will ever read, every YouTube video you will ever watch, everything you will ever be taught about photography tells you one thing: never ever point your camera directly into the sun, because you're going to get what are called specular highlights. And if you notice down on the rocks, there's two big specular highlights, and right in the middle of the frame there's the sun, and that's a huge specular highlight. But you know what? It works in this image. And even though technically this is probably, you know, not the most pure technical image, this is a beautiful image because that's what it looked like. When you look at that image, you feel that heat, you feel that sun, you feel that water, you feel everything. And I had to get down almost face in that water to get that shot. And again, another cell phone picture. Quality stuff coming out of these cameras or these cell phones these days. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when, you know, we had rotary dial telephones. We didn't even have cell phones. And now these cell phones are amazing, but don't be afraid to change your angle. And you're going to see some different angles when we get into some of the portraits. All right, go to the next. There we go. And again, another image that you just could not take unless you had a cell phone with the panoramic mode. This was the Green River, and this is the Green River in Utah. This was right before we drove down into the valley and got into the boat and floated this river. But it's an amazing river. And again, this shows the majesty of that river. This tells that story. I was there. I saw this. Now, some people would quibble that there's a guardrail and a parking lot in the right corner. Again, I want to add a little bit of context to this. I want you to understand how big this is, how grand this is. The things that man builds are nothing compared to these cliffs that have been chiseled over thousands of years. That's the story that you want to tell. And sometimes by including that guardrail, that helps put it into context. I could have very easily stepped over that guardrail, moved 5 feet, and it would have been gone. But that wasn't the image that I wanted. I wanted to show the majesty of this and the contrast between what man has built and what nature has built. And that to me is the story. All right, next one. We may be done in this. Oh no, there we go. This is probably the most hackneyed picture that anyone will ever take, is a sunset. Every time I teach a class in photography, I just dread the cat pictures and the sunset pictures because there's just millions of them, and that's really all people want to take sometimes. And I'm guilty of it too. This just happened to be a very strange day for me. This was the day that I learned that my brother had passed away, and I was actually on a fishing trip when he passed. And for some reason, it struck me as it was this beautiful, and it was an emotional day for me. And that was really a shot that I took after I had loaded my boat up and I was just about ready to drive home and deal with reality. And I turned around and looked at that and I thought, you know, it can't all be bad if God's still going to give us this. So probably not the best picture, falls into the hackneyed sunset mode, but still a pretty decent photograph, I think. All right, let's go again. There we go. Another shot of the Green River. That was taken basically from the same angle that I did the panoramic from, and cropped out 90%, almost 100% of the parking lot or the viewing area that I was in. So if you like to look at photographs that don't have anything built by man in it, there you go. But another majestic picture of that incredibly beautiful river. All right, let's go into the files that says fish heads. One of the things that I like to do, there's just a few in here, is I like to, again, do insert pictures when I'm telling a story. Most of the time when I'm telling a story, I'll do it with 15 or 20 photographs. And I like to include some macro photographs in those. So we're going to run through a few of these real quick.
Can you see that fish picture, Kevin?
No, I cannot. Nope. There we go. Now I can. So I like to include just a few insert pictures of some macro pictures. So we're going to go through a few of those. We're going to go through some birds, some insects, and some fish. But one of the things I like to do is I call them fish heads, is I like to take pictures of really up close fish. This is a little bass that I caught. And I had somebody else hold it while I took the picture. And again, to get this picture, I had to change my angle. I couldn't take this picture from the boat. So I had to get down in the water and actually take this picture of this fish, which I had to do very quickly, obviously. We kept the fish underwater until we were ready to go. And then he pulled it up and we took the photograph. Let's go to another one. There's just another, they're almost like fish portraits. I mean, it's kind of funny. But I've gotten to where I can do them in about 2 seconds. I can pull that fish out of the water, get a quick picture of it, and release it. I'm not interested in killing any fish. That's not my business. My business is catching them and releasing them, and they're kind of like my little employees, so I like to treat them well. But I do like to get some nice pictures of them. That's just a little sunfish. I think the next one, go to the next, should be another sunfish. There we go. Just a different one, a lot of different colors on them. And let's go to the last one. I think there's only one left. That's a Rio Grande Perch. I call it the what in the hell is it fish, because every time someone catches one, they say, what in the hell is that? And it's a cichlid. It's actually in the Piranha family. That one happens to be a male, and you can tell because of the big lump on his forehead. The female has a smooth forehead. And they're an interesting fish because they're one of the few fish in the world that breeds with the same mate for life. They are monogamous. When you catch one, the other one is always nearby. And that's why I always return these, because they do not breed with other fish, with other cichlids. Is there anything else in that file? Let's see. Okay, let's go to, you can go to the insects one, that'd be good. And again, these are just going to be pictures that are, and we'll go through these kind of quick. I don't want to bore you with my eccentricities about taking portraits of insects, but one of the things I enjoy about the river is running into things like this. This butterfly just buried, absolutely buried into that flower. The photograph that I wish I could have gotten was when he exited that flower. The entire face of that butterfly was covered with bright yellow pollen, and it happened so quick that I missed it. So I had to settle for this. So that's the best I could do. Okay, you can go to the next one. There we go. Dragonflies. You see millions of them on the river. There's all kinds of different ones in Texas. They love to land on linear objects, any straight lines they really, really like, and you'll see a few of those in here. Let's go to the next. Big grasshoppers. Somebody needs a manicure. But the grasshoppers out on the river can be amazingly huge, beautiful grasshoppers. And again, these are just insert shots that I'm using to tell my story. Okay, on to the next. There we go. These are called mayflies. The western trout rivers are famous for their mayfly hatches. Texas has nothing to be ashamed of. We have huge mayfly hatches. That's just 1 or 2 leaves, and there's probably 30 mayflies on there on the front and the back. And the whole tree was coated like that. And mayflies are interesting. Some of them only live a very short time. They live in the water as a little larvae that kind of swims around, and then they come up and hatch and fly around. Some of them only have 2 days to fly around and breed, and then they die. And I always think that's kind of a ripoff. They've survived about 9 months underwater, not getting eaten by fish, and then they hatch, and they can fly, but only for 2 days. And some of them last longer, but that's kind of their sad little story. On to the next. There we go. Little walking stick. Again, that's a fly rod. They like linear things, and they have a tendency to kind of glam onto those. Let's go to the next. That's another mayfly, just flew into one of the reels. And a lot of these shots are just me paying attention to what's actually going on. You can't stage this. I can't grab a mayfly and set them on the reel of the handle of a reel and say, okay, stay there, and then raise your arms up and look at the camera. And, you know, these are shots that are just grab shots. You have to be ready for them. You have to understand what's going on. This one, I can tell that I used a little fill-in flash just to accentuate the colors and the detail in the wings. But that was just a grab shot. That was a turn and shoot. That was it. All right, next. There's a dragonfly kind of coming out of his husk. Pretty beautiful. And again, this is something that happens, and it's going to happen for maybe 2 minutes at the most before that thing flies away. So you had better be ready with your camera and know what you're doing. One of the things that I do a lot when I'm floating down the river taking pictures is that I constantly check exposures so that I have the exposure set. There's nothing worse than seeing a beautiful thing happen and then you pointing the camera at it, and then you got to adjust a bunch of dials on it. Have that stuff preset, be ready to go. And I'll talk a little bit about that when we get to the trap. Okay, on to the next. Another really, really pretty dragonfly. And again, you know how quick these things are. They land and they flit away in a fraction of a second. So you've got to be ready for this. Okay, next. Lots of spiders. If you're not a big spider fan, the river might not be the place for you. But lots of spiders building webs all over the place. Always good photo opportunities. And again, I used a fill-in flash with this just to accentuate the color. of the spider itself. I actually used a ring light on this one. A couple more dragonflies on a rock in the middle of the river. You know, just a grab shot. I saw it, I shot it, that was it. Grasshopper, this was not much of a grab shot, to be honest with you. That grasshopper sat on that reel sitting on the side of my boat for about 45 minutes. I don't know if he was just tired or if he was digging, riding down the river and not having to work for it, but he literally sat there, and I probably have 50 pictures of this guy, and that one I like the best. But yeah, he hitchhiked a while. Another mayfly. When the mayflies are hatching, they're fun to photograph. You'll notice on the last one, and on this one too, we don't have to go back, this grasshopper on a little sprig. Very, very limited depth of field here. I want the image to draw you into that grasshopper. All that stuff in the foreground, the background is just not important. I want your total focus to be on that grasshopper. So a lot of the images I shoot are at maximum f-stop. That's probably a 1.8 f-stop to get everything else blurred. Again, same thing with the caterpillar. I want everything to be focused on that caterpillar and nothing on the background or the foreground. Okay, let's go into, let's see here. Let's go into trap. Let's talk about trap real quick. So what I mean by trap is, this is a trap focus shot. And you can just go ahead, April, and just go through these, just maybe 2 seconds on each one. This was a picture that I saw coming. I saw these guys in a racing canoe coming up behind me, and I wanted to get a picture of them that I really liked. And so I just set up real quick, and I just simply waited for them to come around that corner. I was about 5 minutes ahead of them. And as you notice, they're getting closer in each image. And they know I'm there. Obviously, they can see me. I'm a pretty big, goofy looking guy. But they get closer and closer. And these still aren't the images I want. But I'm not afraid to just shoot these just in case I can crop them. But we're going to shoot, and we're going to shoot, and we're going to shoot. Still not where I want it to be. And that last image, that one is the image I want. That's the closest image. We've got some spray coming off the paddle. I've got a good shot at both of them. I can crop that image. But it took me 9 images to get there. And with a proper cropping and everything else, that really works for them. That's a good shot. So a lot of times when you know that something is going to move through the frame, if it's going to be a piece of wood floating down the river, or your family floating down in a canoe, don't be afraid to set up and just blow some images. The great thing about digital photography that was not so great when I started on film is that those images cost you nothing. All you have to do is delete them out of the system. You just hit delete, 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 and they're gone. And that's what counts, is you can do over and over again. Let's go into the portraits file. And I'm going to show you some portraits here, some group shots, some other things. And again, remember why we're taking photographs is we're trying to, and you only need to spend about 3 seconds on each one, April. We're trying to tell a story here. We're trying to say, I was here, I saw this, I enjoyed this, I want you to share in it. These are 3 guys that went to A&M. They get together all the time. Whoa, little quick, little quick. Back her up, back her up. Okay, these are 3 guys go to A&M. They get together every year and do a trip. And this was the year they did a trip with me. So, you know, it's kind of a goofy shot. Again, I used a fill-in flash to kind of work some of the shadows out. It was taken at probably not the best time of the day. Let's go to the next one. This was a father-daughter trip right before she left to go to TCU. This was going to be the last time that he was going to get to spend a day fishing with his daughter. So the river's in the background. This says it all. I mean, this is a nice warm image. The river's still a part of it. It's still, I consider it still a river shot. Same thing here, exactly the same story. Mother, son, he's going off to college. Last time they're going to be together for a while. You know, just a nice warm shot. River's in the background. Simple to set up, tells a story. This is one of my boudoir shots that I did out on the river. The reason I wanted to put this one in is because of the lighting. This one, the whole reason this image works is because of the lighting. It is severely backlit. The background gets blown away. I have not photoshopped this image. There is no jiggering with it. That was exactly the way we shot it. The leaves were just glowing. She was willing to get out there on that branch and stand there while I got everything set up. But a great portrait of her, but the lighting is what makes this. And you always have to be mindful of what the lighting's doing. You have to work with that light. You cannot manipulate it like you do in the studio. Let's go to the next. Okay, I always run this one in my slideshow and then go to the next one immediately, and boom, all you people that thought she didn't have a top on, you're all wrong. Again, I do a lot of fish pictures, and I try to mix them up and make them kind of fun and playful. People love to have pictures with the fish that they caught, and so I try to do it a little bit different angles, just kind of play with it a little bit. This was a pretty fun couple. I think the next picture is, yeah, there we go. I did a portrait of them, you know, they were just having a great day. And instead of standing them up on the river, up on the bank or in the boat or whatever, I just say, hey, get out in the water, let's do it. And it's always fun when you have people that are willing to play along with your, you know, silly little idea of what a good photograph is. But to me, that's a great photograph. Again, same thing, mother, son, great photograph, put them out in the water. The reason we got in the water this time was, I remember that day, it was about 100 degrees, but still a great portrait. It tells that story. That's what we're doing. We're storytellers. Another story, again, you know, just a cool portrait, a little bit different. If you go to the next one, it's the same two, I believe. Yeah, there we go. A little bit different, using the scarves, just covering up, kind of a cute, you know, nice portrait. Portraits don't always have to be of people. This is a friend of mine's dog. He likes to get out, run around on the shore, chase frogs and lizards and stuff. But fun little dog, great little portrait. Just again, a quick grab shot. Again, this is the same girl I was talking about the light before. This is a total light shot. This shot doesn't work if the light isn't exactly the way it is at that moment. And you have to learn to find that light, to find what looks good. And that looked great at the time. The background's nice and dark. She pops out. No Photoshop necessary, no fill-in flash, no nothing. Just a nice clean shot. And again, this is one of those big cypress trees. Use those as design elements in your photographs. You know, that to me is a beautiful portrait of this young lady, using something that you cannot replicate. You can have all the tricks in the studio. You can have all the cool backgrounds you want. You can have all the everything you want, but you put her out in nature, and that is the story right there. That's the picture. Same thing here. Again, just a different angle on cypress roots. I love cypress trees. If you were to go through my portfolio and my boudoir stuff, probably 60% of my river stuff is on a cypress tree. They're gorgeous. Be different. Try something different. You know, I've seen this hair flip thing done a couple times. I thought it'd be fun to do with her. This was one of the pictures she loved the most. But just try to be different. Try to use the water as an element, not just as a static element, but as a moving element. Let's go to the next. I think we got another one. And again, changing your angles around. This is a young man that was fishing with me, and I really wanted to get a picture of him. All the other kids were standing up on the shore, afraid to get wet. This kid was catching all the fish. He moved out into the water, and I wanted to show that. The story I wanted to tell was that we were out in the water up to our necks, and to get that picture, I had to get out in the water up to my neck. So don't be afraid to move around and try different angles. Again, just an angle shot, another light shot. The whole reason this picture works is lighting. The lighting was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. The leaves are on fire behind her, but I still have detail on her skin. Still looks good. And again, it really helps to have models that are game to do ridiculous things like crawl out on the edge of that branch. That'll look good. You know, if you've got people willing to do that, there she is again. Her name's Tay. And again, you know, don't be afraid to use that water. That's a great image. And it takes 30 of those to get that one picture. So don't be afraid to shoot over and over and over again. Remember, you're not paying for these things per frame. Nice portrait here using the reflection in the water, a nice calm pool. But again, no jiggering of the light. I used a little bit of fill-in flash here, but very, very little. And again, this super warm image, background is minimized, very shallow depth of field, nice portrait. Same thing here. This is all about light. This is all about putting her with that backlit and that sheer little cape thing she's wearing. It is all about using that light, using that river. You get the reflection of her in the river. You've got all this action going on in the background. The leaves are on fire again. That's the image you want. Another one where we're using the water as kind of a prop almost. Putting your hands straight down in the water, lifting them up real quick. Again, it took 20 or 30 to get it to look perfect like that. All right, I could keep going, but I think I've bored you guys enough. Hopefully you've learned a little bit. Hopefully you've seen some images that will inspire you to get out and try to get on the water and do some photography. I absolutely love photographing on the water. I love doing fish photography. I love doing people photography. I love doing all of it. It's amazing. And I'm really glad that Jill and the Chamber, April especially, joined EcoFest together with Photo Fest, because I think it's a natural mate. I mean, you can't beat the backgrounds that are out there in nature. And if we don't start taking care of them a little better, they're not going to be there. So I'm really glad to see that. And I hope that some of you come back when I'm on my panel. I think Jill's going to tell you when that panel is going to be, because I would love to answer questions. I'd love to answer questions about my images, and I'd love to answer questions about just my overall concept, what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, how I'm doing it. So hopefully you'll join us on the panel discussion, and hopefully you got a little bit out of this today. So I think I'm going to turn it back over to Jill.
Hey, Kevin. Thank you so much. That was fantastic. Such a terrific presentation. And you hit it the nail on the head there. The reason we're doing EcoFest and PhotoFest together has a lot to do with if you're observing the environment around you a little bit more carefully. You're doing that for the photography. You start to learn how to love it. You start to learn how to take care of it a little bit better. So that's exactly the reason we're doing these things together. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks also for the reminder that it's really important to take care of your equipment, making sure that it doesn't get wet. And if it does, don't just turn it on right away to make sure it's going to work, right? So get that desiccant in there. Bring your towel, just like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, right? It's the towel is the most important thing. Yep. And thanks for all those are some really beautiful images that you have along the river. I hope it inspires me to go out a little bit more. So hopefully it'll inspire more people to head on out and check out what's along the river and really take some great photos. And to the viewer, thanks again for watching this Eco Photo Fest presentation. We really thank all of our sponsors, and we thank April Daniels for all of her technical skills. This time around, especially with her running the show, we really appreciate her taking care of that. And don't forget, the photo contest is going on throughout this program as well. And all of that information is available through the links connected to this video. You'll be able to upload your photos anytime between October 10th and October 24th. There will be instructions on how to do that and how to connect with that contest. And as Kevin mentioned, we'll have live interactive Zoom sessions this week. So at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, 10/13, and 6 p.m. on Thursday, 10/15, we'll be able to ask Kevin and the other panelists your questions about all the eco photo presentations you've seen. Kevin will be on the Tuesday panel, so that's Tuesday at 6 p.m. on 10/13. Registration is available on the link with this video and at the Eco Photo Fest website. And please also mark your calendars for the Wednesday, October 14 at 3 p.m. for the Outdoor Tourism Roundtable. We hope to see you there, and we're looking forward to having a lot of you at the presentations to see what kind of questions are asked. And thank you again, Kevin, for being here and for giving a great presentation.
My pleasure.